Welcome, and thanks for stopping by. Whether you're new to the channel or have been here before, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. If you're like me, your true passion for watch collecting probably really began after you purchased your first mechanical watch. There's just something special and unique, almost alive, about that series of intricate gears and springs working together to keep precise time across the course of a day. However, with that complexity comes some additional maintenance and additional awareness that you need to have in transitioning from a quartz or battery powered type of watch over to a mechanical watch. But as we'll see in this video today, it's really not that difficult, and once you're familiar with them, it'll quickly become a part of your daily routine. So first, I want to note that we're going to be looking at automatic watches. So these three here are three variations of automatic movements. What that means compared to another style of mechanical watch, which is a manual wind watch, is that automatic watch actually has in the back here a rotor that spins around inside the case, and we can see in this because of an exhibition case back, that rotor actually moving around. Whereas a manual wind watch only winds by turning the crown, an automatic watch winds that mainspring as the rotor moves around. So the first thing that you want to do anytime you get a new watch is to identify what type of movement you have in it. So I've already mentioned that these three are all automatic watches, so each of them features a rotor that will keep the watch wound. Then you want to look at what actual type of movement it has in it. So this one has an ETA 2892, this one has a Miyota 8200, and this one has a Seiko NH35. The reason why that's important is each of these operates a little bit differently and has a different feature set that's included with it. So with this watch, you'll see the rotor spins in both directions, and it's actually winding the watch as it spins in each direction. This watch also has a rotor in the back, but this one is not bidirectional, it is unidirectional. That doesn't mean that the rotor won't spin in both directions, that means it only winds in one direction. This watch, you can see, doesn't have an exhibition case back, so you can't see the rotor moving around, but it too is a bidirectional, just like the ETA movement here. So that's the first thing that we want to identify. The next is looking at the dial, you'll be able to see what's referred to as complications. This first watch here doesn't have anything on the dial. This is just your basic three-hand type of movement, so it doesn't have any cutouts for date, so this doesn't have any complications. This next one has two complications. You can see that it has both the day and the date on the dial. In this last one here, this has a single complication down at the 6 o'clock position. So we have what's referred to as the 3 o'clock position, and then the 6 o'clock position. And this one only has a date window, so it has one complication. So now that we've identified that, let's look at one of the features that you can't readily see, and that is hand winding. So each of these, and you'll notice the crowns are a little different. So these two are dive style watches. So the crown actually screws down to help with water resistance, whereas this one does not have a screw down crown, so you can just move it right away. With these, if you unscrew the crown and pop it to the first position, or the 0 position, depending on how the manufacturer refers to it, you can turn this, and that actually winds the mainspring. So this is what's referred to as hand winding function. Not all automatic watches have this. Some automatic watches you can only charge or wind the mainspring by moving the rotor. So you would generally give those a little shake to get them started. Another feature that you want to look at, and typically with your watches, you're going to have anywhere between 1 and 2 click positions. So with this particular one, even though it doesn't have a complication, this has what's referred to as a ghost date position. So you have a first click here, even though it doesn't actually have the date, because this movement does support a date. This particular watch just doesn't include one. When we pull out to the final position, watch the second hand. You can see the second hand stop there. This is what's referred to as hacking. The thing that's nice about having hacking is you can actually get this lined up and wait for it to come to the 12 o'clock position and stop it at that point, and that allows you to get the hands precisely lined up, as well as it makes it easier to synchronize your time. So that is something that both of these outside two have. They have what's referred to as hacking. This middle one here, this does not have hacking. So you'll notice when you pull out the crown, it's all the way out and the second hand's still moving. Non-hacking movements, you shouldn't be scared away from them. While hacking is a very much a nice feature, as we'll see here, it is definitely possible to still sync up and to have good performance out of a non-hacking movement as well. So we've looked at some of the different feature sets and what exactly each of those mean. Now let's look at what it would take to actually get the movement going. So as I mentioned, with these, all three of these have hand winding capability. Personally, I don't recommend hand winding. I like to go from either just a little shake or to rotate the watch around. The reason for that being, the general consensus is that the automatic movements, the parts within specific to hand winding, are not quite as robust as they are for a mechanical or manual wind only watch. So with that, I personally, as a precaution, prefer not to use the wind feature. If you want to get the movement started to just get the second hand going, I believe that's perfectly fine to do, though I do recommend doing so off of wrist so you don't put any undue stress on the crown or the stem here by pushing at an angle. So now that we've talked about that, let's look at the easiest one first. All I would do with this to get this started, so once we have the movement going, then from there, all we would need to do is just give it a little bit of a shake. So the movement's then started. Now that we have the movement going, all we would do is wait until that gets to the 12 position, pull out the crown, and then in this particular one, you spin it the crown clockwise, set it, push it in, and you're good to go. I recommend syncing with an atomic clock. That's the easiest way to go to make sure that you're getting precise time adjustment. It's also important to note that I would always wind the hand, whether you spin the crown clockwise or counterclockwise, because it'll vary across the movements. I would always spin so the hands are moving in clockwise position. If you need to adjust for just a minute or two, going in the counterclockwise position, that's not going to harm anything, but doing so excessively can put additional wear and tear on the gears, so it's generally not recommended. Once we've done that, all you do is just push the crown in. I like to spin counterclockwise until it pops, and then just screw the crown down if you have a screw down crown feature on your watch. The reason why I spin it counterclockwise is just to make sure that I don't cross thread. So next, we'll take a look at with one complication. Fundamentally, this process is going to be the exact same, just going to unscrew the crown. I'm going to pop this out. Now though, because we have the date window, what I recommend doing is waiting till the second hand gets to 12. Once it's there, you would just pull that, stop the second hand. Now here's a very important part. You're going to want to spin the crown around until that date window changes over, and you can see that just changed. What that did is that established morning versus evening. So now we know that we're going through morning hours. The reason why that's important is not only to know whether it's day or night so you can properly sync your date window, but additionally that's very important because it is critical that you never adjust the date window between the hours of approximately 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. Personally, I don't ever adjust anywhere near those. I go much more conservatively. I generally set my watches in the morning. So you can see here, I'm about at 7 o'clock. So we'd go through, set the time. Once that's done, pop that in. And then from there, you're good to proceed with setting your date. And you can see here, I'm spinning clockwise and it does nothing. This particular watch, you spin counterclockwise, and that's actually how you change the date. That will vary by each watch, but it's the same basic process. So now I'm just following the exact same thing. This is a screw down crown, screw that in, and then that one would be set. Finally, let's look at a non-hacking watch. So this one, as we've already seen, when you pull the crown, doesn't stop the second hand. So I find these are easiest to set precisely if you're trying to get an exact sync, if you're going from the movement being already completely dead. So you would see the second hand wouldn't be moving at all. With these, I do make an exception in that I do wind the crown, so that way I can get a little more precisely. I generally will start winding about 5 or 6 seconds ahead of the atomic clock time. The reason why I do that is it typically takes around that time to start the movement. And if it does start before the atomic clock catches up, I prefer my watches to run slightly fast as opposed to slightly slow. So otherwise, it's the same basic process, and then once you have gone through and done that, you'll actually have very close to the same sync without having to worry about having or not having that hacking feature. Otherwise, it's the exact same process, just pull the crown out, get to your safe time window. So you would just spin this around until you see both your date and your day go. And you'll notice with this particular one, this will actually change the day, the date before it changes the day. So that's why that 9 to 3, it's still engaged and is still working for your gear in your date window as you're moving through. So once we've done that, it's the same exact thing. All we would do is come back to position 1. Then from there, you'll find with each watch spinning that has 2 complications. Spinning clockwise will change one, spinning counterclockwise will change the other. When you're done, pop it in, and that's all there is to it. With this one, it doesn't have a screw down crown, so once I've popped that in, it's completely done. So as you can see here, there's really not too much to it. There are definitely some things that you need to be very cautious of. My personal pattern for these is, as I mentioned, I start each of my watches at the beginning of every day. It's only about a 3-minute process. It really doesn't add much to your day. And as a watch collector, I enjoy going through those that start to my day. It's nice. It gives you a little more feel and exposure for your watch. Something else to keep in mind, and this is true for all of them, but it's especially important to know with non-hacking movements, and that is the topic of regulation. With this, you'll find what's referred to as positional regulation. This particular watch, as an example, keeps different time, whether it's in the dial up position or the 12 o'clock up position. It actually runs a little bit fast when it's dial up, and it runs a little bit slow when it's in 12 up. The reason why it's important to know those kind of things is if you're going to be wearing your watch every day and don't want to have to go through resetting it, because they do have a power reserve in them. It ranges typically anywhere between 30 hours and up to 70, even 80 hours on some of the newer watches. So with that, this can actually keep moving overnight. And at the beginning of the day, if you keep an eye on the positional regulation, you don't ever have to worry about adjusting that time. With these two on the outside here, because they have hacking, they are especially easy if they are running fast, in that you don't have to change the hands at all. All you do is just pop that crown until the second hand stops, wait for the second hands to catch up with your benchmark clock, and then just pop the crown back in, and you're already set and ready to go for the day, and you're keeping precise time throughout every day. So I hope this has been helpful in getting you familiar with your new mechanical watches. It's really not too bad of a process to get familiar with, and I think as you get used to it, you'll really enjoy them. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day.